So, Lone Rider here, and just wanted to throw out another lesson from Watchung. Essentially, you don't spend nearly 3 years working on something and not learn something from it. And being as I was working in close proximity with other mountain bikers, other cyclists, the government, their contractor, well, I got to learn a little more than I'd like about how the governmental system works, and at least here at the county level, as we were trying to get mountain bike access for nearly 3 years. And the lesson from Watchung in this case that I wanted to talk about is just because you don't succeed doesn't mean you were wrong. This really solidified for me. I was rewatching the old science fiction program Firefly, which is basically like a Western set in outer space. And one of the main characters, this guy named Malcolm Reynolds, is the captain of this spaceship. And he and his crew are basically living on the sort of frontier of space. And he had served in a basically outer space civil war, and the side that he was fighting for, which wanted to remain independent, lost the war. So there's this great scene with a great line in one of the episodes. And actually, now that I think about it, a lot of the shows that I liked growing up, The X-Files is another one, not the horrible 2016 attempted comeback miniseries, but the original X-Files, the original 9 seasons. Yeah, The X-Files is another one that had a lot of good lines. But yeah, there's this line where he's being questioned by a government official, and the official asks him about naming his spacecraft after the battle at which his side lost the war. And he says, isn't it strange to name your spaceship after a battle that you were on the wrong side of? And of course, Malcolm Reynolds' response is, may have been the losing side, still not convinced it was the wrong one. And it really made me think because, obviously the folks that were working for mountain bike access had facts on their side. They had fairness on their side. They had, we were right, and the people who wanted to keep us banned were wrong. And it is a lot to wrap your mind around when basically that doesn't matter to people in charge, to scaremongers who just don't like the idea of sharing the trail with bikes, to you name it, all sorts of things. And nobody wants to hear this, but when you enter in to try and resolve a public issue, when you see something wrong and you say, you know what, that's not right, let me help try and fix it, there's a good chance that you're going to fail. Not always, and frankly, if anybody thought they were going to fail, they wouldn't try. But the point is that it's always a possibility. In fact, it's more than a possibility. A lot of times it's likely, because there are established policies and established people in positions of authority who don't want to be challenged, and there's sometimes just a prevailing opinion. And it's always sad when facts and truth and fairness and, well, what's right, get beat by opinions and by, entrenched personages and people who just don't want to have to admit that 20 years ago somebody who works for the same organization might have made a mistake. But sometimes it happens. And, I learned a lot of stuff from this, and I met some new people, and we got to do some cool things, and we got to get a little bit of the truth out there, and maybe make things easier for the next generation of riders if they have to confront this down the line. Because the one thing we know is the mountain bikers aren't going away, right? Cycling's been here since the 1880s in its modern form, and mountain biking's been here for well nigh to 40 years now. So cycling isn't going away, and mountain biking in particular isn't going away. The mountain bikers are here. The government just, at least at the Union County level here in Union County, New Jersey, refuses to recognize that they're here. They just, I guess they're hoping that if they just keep the park closed to mountain biking, or the entire park system now, because they expanded the ban that we were against to the entire park system rather than end it, which is what they had promised. I guess they're figuring if they just keep the entire county park system closed to mountain bikers long enough, we'll all move somewhere else. And that's as may be. And, I got to be honest, I know a lot of people, including myself, looking around saying, the hell are we paying taxes for? We can't even use half the land, you know? Um, I mean, in New Jersey, they've got this like open trails policy where they actually indemnify private landowners against liability if they allow people to use trails that run across their land. That's how much they want to give people access to the outdoors. But for some reason, an entire county can keep its entire park system closed to mountain biking, and nobody denies them state funding or anything else. There's no repercussions. So it is very strange. But I guess they're just thinking that it's going to go away. They'll just close their eyes. And if they keep them closed long enough, when they open them, will be gone. Um, Individual cyclists may be gone. They might get disgusted and move to a county that's run by people with sense. But the point is, cycling as an activity and mountain biking in particular is always going to be here. It's not going away. The question is, are you ready to accept that fact and recognize reality and deal with it accordingly? And they don't want to. They're still stuck in 1995, which is kind of sad, you know. Um, but yeah, we learned a lot, and we got the truth out there. And at least now, before nobody knew what was going on. They were as ignorant about what the government policy was and its consequences and all of that as they were in 1995 when the decision was being made behind their backs in a closed room meeting by the unelected. Um, and filing a series of open public record act requests and talking to people and going to these meetings and getting the word out and even writing things online, um, talking to people at all the going around to all the local bike shops and trying to get everybody's support. Um, you know, meeting with the people from JORBA, the Jersey Off-Road Bicycling Association, which was very helpful. Um, you know, um, a lot of the facts are known now. So, in the future, if somebody else has to take this up and try and challenge the ban, maybe the next generation of riders, they at least have a starting point now, which they didn't have before because the government was keeping all the facts under its hat. So, if nothing else, we just put the cards on the table. Somebody else might decide to pick themselves up and deal them in. But we've taken this as far as we can with the people still sitting in those chairs. And, for whatever the case may be, the effort didn't pay off. We thought we already won. They voted to approve the trail plan. They voted to amend the contract to pay the contractor extra money for it. It was kind of like, well, what more can they do? We're just waiting for them to literally open the trails. And then out of the blue comes a vote to cancel the trail plan, to strip all mention of mountain biking from it. And then they expanded the ban to all the other county parks as well, in addition to not ending it at Watchung. And that just kind of came out of the blue, From the beginning, the government started meeting with us. They were trying to tell us, we're going to open the park. Don't worry. We realize this was wrong. But, after 2 years of dragging their feet, I guess we should have been suspicious. To be fair, I was suspicious. I was telling everybody, make sure you get guarantees, get timelines. If they tell you, oh, don't worry, when the next thing's ready to happen, we'll get back to you. Don't accept that. Ask for a date and time, right? Maybe not a specific day, but okay, first week in July, something like that. Nope. Nobody held their feet to the fire. Nobody demanded they get specifics, and because of that, they were able to stretch it out for 2 years. Newsflash, it doesn't take 2 years to open the trails to mountain biking. When it came time to close the trails to mountain biking, they were able to accomplish it in one afternoon in a meeting behind closed doors. But for this, they need to drag it out for 2 years. Yeah, we should have known something was wrong. And I was initially, like I said, very skeptical, and I did try to tell other people, but everybody seemed convinced that government was working with them. And of course, what the government was really doing was just stalling and screwing us over. And I honestly have no idea why. Maybe they didn't want to have to revisit the policy decisions they made 20 years ago. Some of the people that were there are still working for the county. I mean, Daniel Benier's still in the Union County Parks Department, etc. So maybe they just didn't want to have to challenge it. But the point is, we went into that armed with the facts, knowing what we knew, and everybody who was against the idea of mountain biking access was repeating myths, undocumented allegations, things that they think may have happened 20 years ago, but that there was never any documentation of by the government's own admission. Um, and like I said, it's when you have people with the facts and with fairness on their side and with a reasoned argument for fair trail access, and on the other side you have a bunch of hysterical people saying, well, what if the mountain bikers decide to attack us or something, right? Like we think we're a bunch of hooligans. Again, one person said, well, they're going to kill all the animals in the park. Another person said something like, well, what if they kidnap our kids? Like we're a bunch of criminal villains or something. All this over riding your bike in the park. And then I remember the one hysterical lady who was like, she drank the Kool-Aid. I don't know what Kool-Aid, but she drank the Kool-Aid, if you know what I mean. She was talking about how they should use drones to go after us. I mean, yeah, a lot of hysteria. Well, one guy got up there and he said that he thought we were going to be cruising the trails at something like 40 miles an hour. Now, you can get up to 40 miles an hour on a road bike pretty easy going down a steep paved road. But I don't know anybody who goes that fast recreational mountain biking on a dirt single track trail in a public park. I mean, I've been a cyclist for over 20 years. I've never gotten anywhere near that fast mountain biking, anywhere. So, just totally ignorant. And, it's always sad when that ignorance and that hysteria and that fear mongering weighs out over the truth. It's always sad when, you're right, but it doesn't matter because people have a bias or people have an agenda. Government people want to keep their jobs. And as a result, not only do you lose all the time and effort that you invested in it, but the end goal of the effort doesn't materialize, the trail access for everybody, which is what we were arguing for. Yeah, that line from the TV show Firefly really stuck in my craw. And I gotta say, may have been the losing side, not convinced it was the wrong one. And as an addendum to that, sometimes when you are on the right side, you can still lose. I mean, if an unjust government policy has remained in place for 20 years, there's a good reason for that, right? And it's probably that people have invested themselves in keeping that policy in place. They don't want to admit they're wrong. And changing the policy would be admitting that somebody was wrong. And I understand inertia is a powerful thing. Nobody wants to realize we made a mistake. But compared to perpetuating an unjust government policy decades into the future, just to avoid having to admit you may have made a mistake, that's not cool. On the other hand, it would have been better if we got trail access. Let me put it that way. Kind of disappointed we didn't win, but I'm not sad I did it. I learned a lot, and I helped get some of the facts and the truth out there in the public sphere, and hopefully, that's something. That's something that wasn't there before. People now know exactly how the mountain bike ban was imposed. People now know the history behind it. They didn't know that before. And, a lot of people up until a few years ago were under the impression that somebody actually sat down and passed a law to ban mountain biking. Now we know it didn't happen. It was a bunch of unelected guys in a back room, meeting in secret, like there was some kind of cabal or something, right? And then trying to, after the fact, justify it by repurposing an old ordinance about roads, paths, sidewalks, and not blocking cars from 1983 that they never actually linked in writing to the ban from 1995 until 2014, when people like me began asking questions and saying, well, you've been saying for 20 years it's against the law. What law is it? And then for the first time in over 2 decades, nearly a quarter century, we could actually read what the law, or ordinance in this case, said. And it turns out it doesn't actually say what they've been saying it said. And of course, the first time that ordinance was specifically identified as the ordinance in question and linked to the ban was, well, 2 decades after the ban was enacted. Isn't that awfully strange? Yeah. Now people know these things. They didn't know them before. And, you know, the, hopefully, getting the facts out there will make it easier for the next people that come along and try to challenge this. Um, because, the mountain bikers aren't going away. We're still going to be here. So, um, basically, if you go into something like this trying to fix a bad government policy or trying to challenge something that's not right, just be prepared you could lose. But realize that even if you lose, you can still accomplish something. We didn't get trail access, but we got to the truth behind the history of the mountain bike ban. And it's not a truth that looks good for the government, no matter how or what angle you look at it from. And that may make it easier for somebody else somewhere down the line to do what we couldn't. So, even though we lost, we did still do something. And again, the fact that you lose doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, especially when you're up against, well, to use a line from another TV show, this one from Agent Dana Scully in the X-Files TV series, culture of corruption. When you're up against a culture of corruption, um, it's not easy. So don't be deterred from getting involved in policy matters. If you see something that's wrong, point it out. If you think you can maybe help change it, give it a try. The worst that can happen is you won't succeed. But even there, you might still accomplish something. You might get some truth out. You might find out something that people didn't know before about what was going on. And even if you accomplish absolutely nothing, at least when you go to bed at night and turn out that light, you're not thinking to yourself, I had a chance to try and do something right, and I skipped out on it because I couldn't be bothered, or I didn't think it was worthwhile, you know? So, one rider out, and stay cool.